The numbers have shifted dramatically, and in the shifts, I saw one number this weekend, over the weekend, that showed that women now 45 and under see abortion as the top campaign issue, the top political issue in America over the economy. And that's gotten Donald Trump, saying he's going to be a pro-choice advocate, in effect, using pro-choice advocates' words, saying, I'm going to be a great champion for reproductive rights. And then he changes when he gets chastened. Then he changes back, says he's going to be against Florida's 6-week abortion ban. Then, just all over the place right now, because the numbers certainly aren't going in his direction. And he understands, as he's always understood, that the position that he's responsible for, the terminating of Roe v. Wade, as he said it, is very unpopular going into these final 2 months of the campaign.
Yeah, and he's really known that since Dobbs came down. Let's be honest. Remember, after the disastrous midterm elections for Republicans, where there was supposed to be a red wave in 2022, and there wasn't, he said outwardly it was the abortion issue. We talk too much about abortion, despite the fact that he appointed the three Supreme Court justices who got rid of Roe. So obviously he knows, and you can tell by his flailing of just in the last few days on the question of when an abortion ban in Florida should start. 6 weeks is where it is now. There's that new measure, Amendment 4, on the ballot this November. He's been all over the place on that the last couple days. But you're right, we've turned the corner. This is the home stretch, about 2 months until Election Day. 1 week until that huge debate between Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris. And as you wake up to the end of summer, here's where the race stands. It's close. It's going to be close. A new poll finding no real big bounce in support for Vice President Harris coming out of the Democratic National Convention a couple of weeks ago. The latest ABC News Ipsos poll finds the race essentially the same now as it was before the DNC, with Harris up 52 to 46. That's among likely voters. When it comes to attributes, 46% of those polled see Harris favorably as a person versus 43% who have an unfavorable impression of her. 33% see Donald Trump favorably, 33 versus 58% who have an unfavorable impression of Donald Trump. 53% of the people in this poll view Harris as qualified to be president, compared to 47% for Trump. Meanwhile, the gender gap has widened. Vice President Harris now leads by 13 points among women. That's up from 6 points pre-convention. Donald Trump is up 5 among men, 54 to 41 for an 18-point gap there, Joe. So, again, maybe not a big bounce coming out of the convention that some people in the Democratic Party had hoped for, but when you look at the before and after, meaning with Joe Biden at the top of the ticket and now with Vice President Harris at the top of the ticket, there is a remarkable change.
Yeah, there is a remarkable change. And you look at the characteristics, all the things that Donald Trump was ahead of before Harris got into the race, he's now behind. And I think the most striking thing, Mika, that when you're looking and people are trying to sort through this race and what direction it's going, you just look at the favorable, unfavorables. Donald Trump way up, upside down by, close to 20 points in the 30s for likable. And then you have Kamala Harris actually upside. I think it's like 46, 43. That is a huge gap. And the Trump campaign has said, and if you see some of just the absolute crazed behavior, and it's really almost too much to get your arms around. And I understand that's the idea of it, that the claims are so outrageous, they're so disconnected from the truth. Trump moving all over the place on issues from abortion to immigration, now saying we need more immigrants in the United States. All of this stuff, the crazy stuff at Arlington, they're absolutely desperate. And the campaign has said internally, they know they can never they can't make people like Donald Trump.
Right.
So their goal is to make people hate Kamala Harris.
Yes.
And that's where we are. And if they can't get Americans to hate Kamala Harris, then they understand she will win.
So you mentioned flip-flopping on one of many issues, but one of them was reproductive rights. And the former president continues to struggle on the issue. with a series of flip-flops. Evangelicals have supported him in part because of his strong pro-life stances, but he undercut that support last month in a social media post claiming he would, quote, be great for women and their reproductive rights. Days later, in an interview with NBC News, he was pressed about Florida's 6-week abortion ban.
Well, I think the 6 week is too short. It has to be more time, and so and I've told them that I want more weeks.
So you'll vote in favor of the amendment?
I am going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks.
The Republican presidential nominee has now come out against the Florida ballot measure that would extend the time women in the state have to get an abortion. Conservative backlash to his earlier comments was swift, with some on the right warning Trump was risking losing a key block of anti-abortion voters. He attempted then to clean up his comments on Friday. Watch.
Are you voting yes or no on Amendment 4 in Florida?
So I think 6 weeks, you need more time than 6 weeks. I've disagreed with that right from the early primaries. When I heard about it, I disagreed with it. At the same time, the Democrats are radical because the 9 months is just a ridiculous situation where you can do an abortion in the 9th month. And, you know, some of the states like Minnesota and other states have it where you could actually execute the baby after birth. And all of that stuff is unacceptable. So I'll be voting no for that reason.
Okay, that was just a ridiculous lie. The Harris campaign issued a statement following Trump's latest comments. Quote, Donald Trump just made his position on abortion very clear. He will vote to uphold an abortion ban so extreme it applies before many women even know they are pregnant. Jonathan Lemire, there are many different angles we could take on this. The 9-month lie is one that we've seen pervade the Republican Party since the onset of the campaign. It is a complete lie, although it is taken by many Republican followers and MAGA voters whole cloth. They just take it. They think it actually happens because it's said enough and it's echoed enough on different right-wing networks. It's not corrected. The bigger issue is that all of his different answers is what Trump does. It confuses people. Nobody really knows where he stands, and ultimately nothing matters. It's a bigger part of, some would say, some dangerous trends toward fascism in this country. But for this election, could the lies work?
Yeah, it's certainly more of the firehood of falsehood strategy we've seen from Trump for a number of years now. But it's also reflective of how his campaign is, frankly, panicking about the abortion issue. You know, I have talked to those in Trump world who have said the former president himself has acknowledged privately that he thinks abortion could be the biggest problem his campaign faces this November. We know that though publicly he's tried to downplay it, privately advisors are worried about where this stands. Hence the remarkable flip-flops in the last week about Trump here as he's trying to be pinned down about where he stands with this Florida abortion regulation. And you know, Vice President Harris received some criticism last week after that CNN interview saying she had changed her position on a few things. There were slight modulations, but Trump deserves that sort of scrutiny times 10 for how he seems to flip-flop on things like this, abortion, seemingly every day, depending who he's talking to, depending on the latest poll he has seen. And on polls that we should note, it seems like Harris got her convention bounce pre-convention because Democrats were so excited about the change in the ticket. That's when the burst of energy came. And Caddy, we are seeing, though, a few other polls have shown little upticks for her ever since. And also that 52-46, that's outside the margin of error. We haven't been able to say that a lot this campaign because the race is so tight. It does seem like, though close, Harris has momentum, and the abortion issue is a big part of it.
I love the idea of a pre-convention bounce. That's what we should all be looking for in future. Perhaps we have a pre-show round of applause as well. Look, I think, you know, some of the Democrats that I've spoken to over the course of this weekend have expressed concern that the polls have not gone as far ahead for Harris as they might have expected, given the enormous amount of fundraising, that huge burst of enthusiasm in August, and a very successful convention. And they had hoped that she would be perhaps more convincingly ahead particularly in the swing states. Now, if you have to think that because of the Republicans' electoral majority, she needs to be 6 points ahead in terms of the popular vote nationally, she's just about there. So now all the focus is going to be on those swing states. Abortion being a main issue for women, coming up ahead of immigration and the economy is incredibly important. Women decide elections in America. They vote in bigger numbers in America. But if it's also going to be an election about economy and immigration, he still has an advantage on that. So I think the Harris campaign is right to stress, as it did over the course of this weekend in Pittsburgh, that they go into this as the underdogs. That's the best way for them to approach the last few weeks.
And Mika, you touched on this, but it has to be said again. The idea that Donald Trump has such contempt for voters to suggest that babies are being murdered after they are born as part of some abortion program in blue states, that's called murder. That's not happening. And also, as you know, and you've said many times, abortions that happen after 21 weeks or 24 weeks are extremely rare. Women don't want to have an abortion at that point. It means something medically is wrong and they have to have an abortion. That's not an elective thing that women do casually. And John makes an important point, which is the entire argument the Trump campaign is making about Kamala Harris is that she has no core. She stands for nothing. She said one thing in 2019 and now she's saying something different to be elected. Well, watch Donald Trump in the last week just twisting in the wind on this question of abortion.
Everything that they accuse her of, he is 100 times over. The balance just bounces right back on him.